So in this hadith, Hisham, on the authority of his father, who said that Khawla bintu Hakim, one of the Sahabiyat, she was one of the women who offered herself to the Prophet ﷺ. Meaning, there were multiple instances where women came to the Prophet ﷺ asking for him to marry them. All right, there were multiple instances. Khawla bintu Hakim, she was one of the women, many women, who presented themselves to the Prophet ﷺ. And what does that show you? If many women have done it, then that means that what? It wasn't haram. Because if it was haram, then the Prophet ﷺ would have told the first woman, it's haram, don't do that. And then that news would have spread amongst the women, and nobody would have ever presented themselves to the Prophet ﷺ in that fashion. But as Imam Al Bukhari mentions in a question, is it permissible for a woman to present herself to marriage to a man? Meaning, is it permissible for a woman to pursue a brother in marriage? And I know that many women will clutch their pearls and say, I would never. But let's just say hypothetically, that you are somewhere minding your business and you see a brother, handsome brother, never seen this brother before, and you're single. He has signs that look like he might be single. He doesn't have any kids with him. His wife is not with him. So the only thing to assume is that maybe he's not married. And even if he is married, then maybe he's into polygyny. Who knows? What do? You see this brother, he's handsome. He looks, y'all look like y'all in the same age bracket, look like he's well-to-do. You're checking him out because women, you have a way of, doing this. You got a photographic memory. You take one glance at him and then you go about your business and you've seen everything that you need to see on him, right? His shoulders are broad, he's tall, he's this, he's that. You've seen everything with one glance. You guys have perfected that. Men, we got to stare until it's haram, right? A man was with the Prophet ﷺ, young man was with the Prophet ﷺ, and the guy was looking at the girl as she was walking by. The Prophet took his head and turned his head the opposite way. Like, man, lower your gaze. I'm standing right here, right? I'm right here with you. Like, men, we're visual creatures, so we got to take in the whole entire image, right? Right. To the point where it becomes creepy. Whereas a woman, she can, one glance, boom, she's seen everything that she needs to see. So, Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she said that, Hisham's father said that Khawla bintu Hakim was one of the women who presented herself to the Prophet ﷺ, meaning pursued the Prophet, meaning asked him, did he have any interest in marrying her? And so going back to my scenario is that what is a woman to do? Does she just let him go out the store and that's that? Never to pursue anything? Or is there some wiggle room for her to try to find out whether or not he's even married? And if he's not married, is he interested in marriage? And so what we're talking about here is not whether or not this is something that is recommended for women to do. What we're talking about is it permissible for a woman to do it? Meaning, if a woman did it, would she be doing something that is sinful? No, she wouldn't. Because if that was the case, then the many women who presented themselves to the Prophet ﷺ or pursued the Prophet ﷺ, he would have told them that it was haram. He would have told them that it was haram, and they would have stopped at the first person who did it. So Khawla bint Hakim was min allati wahabna anfusahunna lin-nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was from amongst those women who offered themselves to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, meaning in marriage. And Aisha, she said, "Ama tastahyi al-mar'a an tahaba nafsaha lil-rajul?" Aisha said, doesn't a woman have enough shyness to stop her from presenting herself to a man? Showing you that although permissible, there was a certain type of woman who did that was not ubiquitous, that was not something that was common amongst the Sahaba. These were women of a different social status, obviously from the lower tiers of society, because a woman from a higher echelon of society would never do something like that. Why? Because they would consider that beneath them. I'm not going to ask a man, is he interested in marrying me? That's beneath me. Right. So that means that women who do that are of a certain stature, of a certain status, social status in society, because the normal women or women from a higher, upper tiers of their society would never do something like that. And Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, as well as many of the other sahabiyat, there's another narration that mentions Salama when she was present, when a woman presented themselves to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And sometimes these women would do this right in front of the wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Aisha standing right there. I mean, but desperation, here again, when you're desperate and you're in survival mode, you're not thinking about all of the normal things that people would normally consider, because you don't have the luxury to consider it because you're desperate. A person who is desperate doesn't consider the normal things that a person who is not desperate would consider, because they have the luxury to consider it when you're not desperate. You're like, oh, this is embarrassing. I don't want people to think this. I don't want people to think that. That's when you have the luxury to consider those things. But when you're in desperation, all of those things go out the window. Or you're vulnerable, right? And, desperation is a form of vulnerability. Desperation is a form of vulnerability. So Aisha said, أَمَا تَسْتَحْيِي الْمَرْأَةَ أَن تَهَبَ نَفْسَهَا لِلرَّجُلِ Shouldn't women feel too shy to, offer herself to a man? Like, this is beneath you. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the ayah from the Quran where He says, تُرْجِي مَن تَشَاءُ مِنْهُنَّ, that you can take those of the women that you desire and leave the women that you desire. And Aisha said to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ya Rasulullah, ma ara rabbaka illa yusari'u fi hawak. I only see that your Lord hastens to allow you to fulfill your desires. SubhanAllah. Woo! Man, Aisha. So Aisha is basically saying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals ayats from the Quran that gives you a pass to satisfy your desires. And although that comment came out kind of harsh, it was as a result of her jealousy, because every woman who offered themselves to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he rejected every single one of them. He never took these women up on their offers. And another point I want to make is that she used the word tahaba, which comes from the word hiba, which means to offer as a gift. Meaning these women were offering themselves to the Prophet ﷺ without a dowry. I'll marry you, you don't have to give me a dowry. Right, just wife me. You don't even have to give me a dowry. And that's what it means for a woman to offer herself to a man. And that is meaning bila mahar, without a dowry, which of course is haram. But these women, here again, desperation. When you're desperate, you're not thinking about whether or not this is halal or haram. You're not considering all of those things. You're just like, I want to be married. And women do that in today's time. I'll marry you. I don't need a brother to take care of me. I just need a companion. I just need companionship. I just need, a brother, a good husband, a good man. And, and all of that sounds good because you're delusional. Because in the beginning, right? Because once the dopamine wears off, once the drugs wear off, then you're looking at him like, so you're not going to help me with the rent? It's just like, yeah, but you told me that you didn't need me, for financial stability. You were straight financially. Yeah, I know what I said at the beginning, but now, right, exactly. So stop saying that. Stop saying that. Stop giving brothers a pass. Even if they don't have it right now, okay, I will give you a pass. I will forego my right now, but that does not absolve you of my right over you to be taken care of. You see the difference between the two? One is completely absolving him, and then you reap what you sow. And the other is, I'm giving you a pass because it is my haq to do so for now, because I understand your condition, I understand your situation, you lost your job, you're laid off, or whatever the case may be. And I'm willing to work with you, but I do not absolve you of my right over you. And that is for you to provide me with food, clothing, and shelter, the basics that Islam obligates upon you. You see the difference between the two? Stop telling a brother you don't need him for finances and you don't need him to do this, you don't need to do that, because you reap what you sow.